6? Oh, it is 6.
Yeah.
Okay, where is it? Oh, it's not here.
Just use your wrist.
Former board member would have never allowed that to happen.
She would not have.
Good evening, everybody. It is probably 6 p.m., or maybe 6:01, and I am calling to order the Cuyahoga Heights Board of Education Board meeting. Will the treasurer please call the roll?
Mr. Devens.
Here.
Mrs. Etter.
Here.
Ms. Prowse.
Here.
Mrs. Decker.
Here.
Mr. Suchaki.
Here, 5 present, none absent. On behalf of the board, I'd like to welcome all students, staff, parents, and interested community members to tonight's Board of Education meeting. The board values and encourages public comment on education issues. Anyone having an interest in the actions of the board may participate during public comments portion of the meeting. A copy of the board meeting agenda is available on the school district's website. And I guess please silence your cell phones. At this point, please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just before the meeting started, we made a minor addition to the agenda. If you haven't refreshed your screen, you won't see it on your screen. Mr. Muccio, could you tell us what that addition is, since you're probably the only one who's refreshed your screen?
Yes, it will be adding executive session 121.22G1 to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of public employee or official.
Okay, very good, thank you. So that, may I have a motion to approve the amended agenda?
Yeah.
Second.
Okay, Ms. Prowse got, and then Mr. Dobbins seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, treasurer, please call the roll.
Ms. Prowse.
Aye.
Mr. Devens.
Aye.
Mrs. Etter.
Aye.
Mrs. Decker.
Aye.
Mr. Suchaki.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. There is no one here for comments from the public, so we'll move into section 4 presentations, starting with Mr. Young.
Thank you, Mr. Suchaki. So annually, within 30 days of the state report card being released, school districts must provide a presentation to the public and the Board of Education. And you will see under the public content, we have the state report card report. The report is this booklet that you have. I've given you all kinds of fun attachments tonight, but it's the first one. It's this one right here. That is essentially the summary of what I'm going to go over, much quicker than reading through this particular packet. And then the presentation is also in the public content section. All links should be active so people could go through and click and follow through on their own, should that interest them. So let me go to the presentation. All right, so all right, as you know, we did very well on the state report card this year. Once again, no easy accomplishment for our students, our staff, and the families that are supporting those kids. Each year there are 22 assessments that have to be taken. Students then are evaluated on those assessments over various metrics: achievement, academic growth. We look at early literacy, we look at graduation, we look at college and career readiness, and we look at our subgroups to see how our various student groups are performing. Some of these measures are compared to other students in other school districts, and some are compared against a standard that's set at the state and federal level. So it can be a complicated process, but I want to go through and just simplify this. And again, I don't want to take too much time because I've communicated about this in my newsletter. I've sent it out as a separate communication, and I think it's been in the newspaper even. All right, so we did very well. As you know, we are a 5-star district, as well as 5-star elementary school, middle school, and high school. Our overall ranking, so there are 6 components, and we're going to go through those. Those 6 components have a point value. When you take those point values and add them all together, that gives you an overall ranking of your point value. And then if you sort that from a very fancy spreadsheet the state provides, from first to worst, we fell number 20 overall as a school district out of 607 districts. And then there are over 3,000 individual schools, high schools, middle schools, junior high schools, intermediate schools, elementary schools, you name it, there's all kinds of combinations, and there are approximately 3,300 of those. Our middle school was 152nd out of 3,318. Our high school was 83rd out of 3,318, and our elementary school was 87th out of 3,318. So it was outstanding effort by everybody last year. And here we are already in the middle of it. Here it's October, the third grade state assessment's going to be taking place here in a couple weeks. And we're already collecting various metrics for next year's report card that have to be verified over the next couple weeks. And hopefully we'll continue to perform at the highest level. So the purpose of the presentation is to emphasize our many highlights, to break down each component, to draw comparisons to surrounding districts. And the district piece is important because should you ever be forced to consolidate, who are you consolidating with, and what's the quality of your education potentially going to be? Demonstrate how to navigate report card resources and communicate growth opportunities. Where can we get better? So I've got various links here in the presentation. State report card, by following the link, you go to a home page, type in Cuyahoga Heights. Now you don't want Falls, you got to get the Heights, because if you compare it to the Falls,
Yeah.
there is a big difference in size and big difference in performance. And you'll see the local school district is there, as well as the high school, the middle school, the elementary school. We're focusing just on the school district. All right, it goes to the main page. My name is at the top up there. That's not something that I take lightly. You know, I tell people I don't have any direct impact on the children, so it's important that I do everything I can to clear the path for our teachers and our staff who do work directly with the students to help us reach our potential, because ultimately that's the person they're going to see at the top of the report card. So I'm responsible for it. I take it seriously. I'm super competitive, and I'm glad our staff sees it that way too. But this is your home screen, and here from the home screen then you can view all kinds of information. All right, the first is achievement. Achievement is a measure of how many questions students actually get right. The top 2% of school districts in achievement set the bar. So the bar was set at 109.8 as a performance index. You have to achieve a certain percentage of that particular number in order to get 5 stars. Ours was 102.5, which put us at 93.4. 93.4 gives us 5 stars. And there are various screens over here as you're navigating this site that allows you to see various comparisons by grade, trends by tested grades over various years, proficiency, enrollment by grade, things like that. So proficiency is how many questions did the students get right, or what percentage of the students hit proficient level, okay? So there's a lot of information there. As we go back to the presentation, because I'm going to kind of toggle back and forth between these two. Let's go back before I get into the individual components. I just want you to see this is the breakdown of how many districts and schools receive the ratings. So only 47 districts in Ohio received 5 stars. We were one of the 47. 283 schools out of the 3,318, or approximately 3,300, got 5 stars. We have 3 of the 283. So we're sitting there in that far right column, something to be very proud of when you see the distribution, because the highest number of stars is 3.5 as a district, and the highest number of stars as a school is 4 stars, and we've exceeded that expectation. If you want to look at the individual components for the districts and the schools, for example, all 4 entities received 5 stars on achievement, getting questions right and hitting a certain proficiency mark. Only 15% of districts got 5 stars in that component. 13.6% of schools got it, and we all hit that metric in all of them. You know, the progress is academic growth. We're one of the 9.4% of the districts who got 5 stars, and 2 of our 3 buildings got 4 stars. which was at 5 stars, which was 11.1%. One building, the middle school in Progress, was a 4-star. Gap closing, see that you had a pretty high amount of schools, districts getting 5 stars, 33%. We got that, and then 26.8 for the gap closing. All 3 buildings got 5 stars there. Early literacy is only it's an elementary school and a district measurement. We did receive 3 stars there, which if you look at the districts, that's where almost 43% fell. And that's the same for the buildings at 29%, which is again where the majority fell. We were under 1% away from being 4 stars. And
What would be third, fourth? Like, is that just the elementary test, basically?
No, so early literacy is looking at not just the 3rd grade test, but it's also looking at students who are on reading improvement and monitoring plans and whether they are able to come off of those from one academic year to the next. And then how many students actually hit the 3rd grade reading guarantee mark. So there's 3 measures. Improvement on your REBs. Are you proficient on the 3rd grade test? And then did you get promoted to 4th grade? That's the 3 factors that go into that. So you can see the others, 5 stars for graduation, 49% and 43% were very high. The new component this year is the college career workforce military readiness. It is now part of the calculation. We received 4 stars as a district, 4 stars as the high school. So, we'll work. You'll work really hard to get 5 stars, but it's difficult when some of those metrics aren't in your own hands. So, for example, with that last measure, some of the responsibility falls on the Career Center. So it doesn't fall to us. So there are various things that you have to look at and understand in order to be able to move in the star ranking. And we're pretty aware of that. We're pretty plugged in, and we feel good about the future. When it gets to the overall rating, not all components are rated equally. The state tests, specifically the achievement and the progress component by law, have to be equal in value. And then the other components that are measured also have to be equal in value. We're a big enough school, believe it or not, we have all 6 measures. But there are some districts that do not, because you have to have at least 15 kids to trigger various measures. And especially with schools, for example, the high school doesn't have early literacy. So while the achievement and progress would be ranked equal, they don't have early literacy. And so the other percentages would have to be split between the 3 components, which are always, typically have to be half of what that value is. So the math gets really tricky when you don't have all the components. We have it as a district. So there they all are. Those are our rankings. So when you look at the overall rankings, just as a comparison, and you've got a 3-year comparison since I've been focusing on this particular way of reporting, you'll see overall ranking this year was 20th. Last year we were 24th. The prior year we were 29th. And the comparison districts are Kirtland, just because they're a very similar sized district to us and get very similar results, both in athletics and in academics. So it's a good comparison. And then you'll see Independence, Fairview, Nordonia, Brooklyn, Parma, Garfield Heights, Maple Heights, Bedford, and Cleveland Municipal. So I will always compare how we are doing to those districts. Some are similar to us and others border us. And that's an important piece. So, we were 20th, Kirtland was 13th this year, we're 20, Independence is 32, and then the next is Fairview at 106. So those are the comparisons we'll look at. Again, achievement is based on certain tests at certain grade levels and in certain subjects or content areas. All subjects 3rd grade through 8th grade in English and math have to be tested and measured. Science is tested and measured in grades 5 and 8. And then at the high school, you've got English 2 and Algebra 1. Those have additional ramifications because students have to hit a 684 on those tests in order to be eligible for graduation. So not only do they factor into the report card, they factor into a student's graduation. And then you have geometry, which is still sticking around because of a federal requirement, biology, American history, and American government. Those are the other tests that we test here at Cuyahoga Heights. Okay, so to get 5 stars in achievement, you have to be at 90% of the maximum value. And again, if we go back to the report card, we were at 93.4% of the maximum value. That's why we got 5 stars. Okay? Let's get down here. So there was that, 93.4. 5 stars for everybody. Everybody gets 5 stars, but as a district, Kirtland was 41, Independence 48, we're 49. So we're all pretty close together on just the achievement component. And you can see how it's been in the prior 3 years. Nordonia is next at number 91. When you look at achievement based on median income, all right, we're looking at our performance index of 102.5. We're looking at Cuyahoga County. Solon had the highest performance index of 112.8. You'll notice their performance index is higher than the average. So they're one of the overachievers, so to speak. Median income is $65,000 with an economic disadvantaged population in fiscal 24 of 17.94%. So you can see the rankings there, the top 10. Our performance index 102.5. Our median income is $44,000. So we're 21,000 below Solon. All right, if you look at Bay Village, 26,000 below. Chagrin, we're 30,000 below. So for the most part, you know, there's a pretty big gap between us and other districts. I think in that top 10, who's next? Is it the 55,000 with Independence? Is 11,000 ahead of us. And they have less than half of our economically disadvantaged population. Typically in school districts, when you have high economic disadvantage numbers or students that are coming from that particular background, it may create a disadvantage, an academic disadvantage. We have not seen that here. We see students who are coming from lower income families are still attending college, hitting proficiency marks, achieving and growing at not just the same rates, but sometimes at higher rates than our students who are not living in the same conditions. So there's no disparity here between a student who is economically disadvantaged and one who is not. That is not, it's not been seen to be a gap, and you'll see that in the gap closing component. This is the 6-year trend, not counting the COVID year, because there were not, I think I took out the 2020, 2021 year because the results were, quite honestly, they were awful because we tested and learned and taught through computer screens for about 66% of the year. You know, we were 100% remote for like 49%, and then there was a period of time where half the kids were here and half the kids were through a screen, and we played that game for a while before getting everybody back. So it was a tough year. So you won't see that year selectively put in there. So our 6-year trend, going back to 17-18, we're averaging about 41st in the state in achievement, again, out of 607. Independence is averaging 57, and Kirtland's averaging 67 when you just compare those districts. With respect to progress is academic growth. It's always a measure that people have a difficult time with, understanding. Matt Muccio and I aren't necessarily compared to one another, all right? Matt Muccio has a certain testing profile. Maybe he's in the 95th percentile. And I have a testing profile. Maybe I'm in the 85th percentile of students in the state. Matt Muccio will only be compared to how other students in the 95th percentile are doing. I'm only compared to people in the 85th percentile. We will not be compared to each other because we don't have the same testing profile. And so when you get all the 95th percentile students together and they look at their test scores, what was the average? And did Matt Muccio fall on that average? That's considered a year's growth. Did he perform above that? That's considered exceeding a year's growth. Or did he fall below it? Okay. Likewise, that happens to be in the 85th percentile. So I could go out and I could score in the 87th percentile, and I've exceeded growth. And he could go out and score in the 94th percentile, and he's falling behind. We didn't do as well with him as he did with me. Or maybe he was just bored and didn't take the test seriously. Or maybe he wasn't feeling well that day. Or maybe it's the 4th test he's taking because he's in the sophomore class and they take 4 of these state tests. There's a lot of factors that go into that other than just can the kid do it or not, and did the kid learn it or not. So we like to say that, you know, the relationship building and the impact that students have in the classroom isn't measured on the state report card, but it's good that it does shake out that way. Our growth index is 10.54, which is astronomically high as a school district. It doesn't really mean anything to you other than I can tell you it's really high. It's really high. And our effect size is 0.2, meaning that it's significant. Not only did our students grow and that they exceeded growth, but it was significant compared to how other districts who also exceeded growth performed. The fact that we exceeded growth got us to 4 stars. The fact that we were above 0.1 for the effect size, we're at 0.2, means that we bump up to that extra star. So we've got 5 stars on that particular measure. You can look at individual subjects and you can look at the color codes. You'll see there's an awful lot in this color here, which tells us that our students exceeded, there's strong evidence that they, significant evidence that they exceeded growth. You might see a color like this, which means that there's strong evidence that our students made significantly less than adequate growth. And so those are areas where we need to focus on and improve and ask why. And I can tell you that it's not just a simple, it's not always that simple. For example, if I focus on this particular subject here, well, I start looking back at, I can look back at prior grades, and I can say, okay, this was well above, this is kind of right on, and this is well above. But then we go 2 years of just meeting the expectation. And so, and keep in mind, there's a whole grade level between this last test here and then you take this one because it's a 10th grade test. There is no 9th grade test anymore. And so you have to start asking yourself, is it just about what's going on in 10th grade, or is there something that may be happening as a Tier 1 strategy over a 2, 3, 4 year period? We don't know. That's where we have to dive deep into the data and look at some of our other diagnostics and have conversations with the professionals in the classroom about this. But all of that shakes out to 5-star ranking. So I'm already going longer than I want to here. So progress is a 3-year measurement. 50% is weighted to the current year test, and then they actually go back 2 years. So it gets really difficult because you can't control what happened 2 years ago or last year. You can only control what's happening this current year, but yet you're measured on prior years. So some people agree with that, some people disagree with it.
And that is probably kind of lagging, right? So if you made improvements even last year, and then in some of those subjects that were lower, maybe you're not even going to see it probably for another couple of years, right?
Right. Yeah, it's a tricky thing, academic growth is. Now, if you look at what it takes to be 5 stars as a district, you need at least a +2 with the growth index, and ours was 10.54. So I tell you it's significant, it's really significant. And your effect size needs to be at least 0.1, and ours was 0.2. So again, not easy to do. I'm really proud of the staff that works on this. And so those are the star rankings right there. 3 5s and 1 4. How do we fall this year? Cleveland was number 11. We've talked about that. Sometimes when you are achieving initially very low, and you get a really good program or a really good teacher or set of teachers, they will grow that student. They may go from getting 25% of the questions right to 40% of the questions right, but that is significant. It's highly significant. So it's not uncommon to see schools that are lower achieving doing really well in the progress component. Likewise, it's not uncommon to see high achievers not do well in the progress component because well, we're passing the test, we're all getting A's. Yeah, but you're supposed to get A+. All right, so that can be a difficult thing for people to grasp, and that's why I'm probably the proudest of the progress piece here, because not only are we high achieving, but our kids are showing significant academic growth when compared to other kids just like them in other schools across Ohio. So you can see this year we were 43rd, Kirtland was 35th, Parma 28th, Cleveland 11th. And right behind us is Brooklyn at 68. That's the effect size. You'll see we were number 7 in the state of Ohio in effect size. It's significant, right? That 0.2 was significant. Last year we were 6th. The year before we were 2nd. So we've done really well in the significance of what we're doing in the classroom. Kirtland was 14th at 2nd in the area, and Brooklyn at 41 when we look at school districts of comparison. This is our average over the 6 measured tests. We're averaging about a 33. Kirtland's at 149 and Independence is at 326. Although I'm happy for them because they cut their number in half this year, so good for them. I know their superintendent is working really hard with their staff to make some changes over there, and I'm glad to see that they're getting the results. Gap closing is looking at students in our subgroups or student groups. There are 10 student groups that you see here. This is basically labeling kids on significant factors in which we tend to see a disparity between the haves and the have-nots. That's what we're measuring here. And you get points. The max points you can get are 75, but you have to have at least 15 students in one of those groups in order to be eligible and be held to the standard for that. So for example, English Language Proficiency Improvement Indicator. We had 3 students last year who were English language proficient students. We don't have 15, so they're not going to measure that that category. We were eligible for 45 points. We got 37 of the 45, which is 82.2%. And you only have to be at 60% in order to get 5 stars. So we blew that out of the water. When you go to the state report card and you look at gap closing at a glance, you'll see all of these great things that allow you to interact with them. It's kind of cool because I've been part of the BASA State Report Card Committee for 5 years, and these are some of the recommendations we've made about improving the state report card for people to navigate and to interact with. And it's just kind of cool to see these little dots and see things popping up because, you know, we made some of those suggestions, so it's good to see the work. But when you go here, you'll see in English Language Arts, we hit every single student group. You have to make it to the dot, and we've surpassed the dot. We did the same thing in mathematics, and that's with respect to achievement. With respect to growth, you'll see that students with disabilities exceeded the growth number, as well as all students, but our students, just looking at our white students and our economically disadvantaged students, we didn't hit the mark. Okay. When you look at mathematics, we hit the mark on everything except for students with disabilities in academic growth. We were just short of the 2. We were at 1.8, so we're close. We're really close. Graduation rate, we're at 100%. It's tough to, well, we were at 100% this year. The next year we're at 98.8, but you can see all students, white students, economic disadvantage, we had 100 with all those, so we're in good shape. Chronic absenteeism is at 6.5%. We dropped. We were at 8% the year before, so we've dropped. That's good. And you'll see some other things with respect to gifted. Like our performance index with this was 99.1% of the max value. We were actually part of the max value calculation with our gifted kids, which was fantastic. But you'll see that we didn't get credit for identification and services met because we don't do identification in kindergarten first and academic year or second grade, only in the second grade. It's one of those things I have just me philosophically, I have a tough time identifying kids as gifted in kindergarten because if I have a student who comes from a family that read to their child every night since the time they were born, and they read 1,000 books before they ever walk into the school, they're going to score much better than a kid who's never been read to. And once you're labeled gifted, you're always gifted. So, and we see quite often with students who are early identified, by the time they get to middle school and high school, they are going the opposite of any gifted classroom. They'd rather be a big fish in a small pond and not take gifted classes. And then we don't take gifted classes, you're not being counted as served, and then that hits your indicator in a negative way.
So that's why it's 50% here.
Yeah.
If you can opt out at some point.
If a student is gifted in mathematics and they're an 11th grader and they are not taking calculus, then they are not being served. Or a college credit plus class. If they're taking Mr. Rademacher's mathematical modeling and reasoning class because it interests them, it's not a gifted class. It's not an honors class. So therefore, they're not counted as served. And that's by the child's choice.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that happens. That happens quite often. Kids who go to the Career Center. A kid who goes to the Career Center maybe can't take the AP courses that they once took or wanted to take, and just because of the way the scheduling works. Maybe they're taking an AP government class, but they're identified as gifted in English, and they're not taking a college level English class. Therefore, they're not being served even though they're taking an AP class. It's just not in the area where they've been identified. So it's kind of a complex metric, and some people are pretty, giftedness is important, but some people feel that some gifted lobbyists got into the ears of people back in 2014-15 when they were talking about redoing assessments, redoing the state report card, and there's an awful lot of weight in the gifted area specifically, when maybe it shouldn't have been. But so some people are a little skeptical about it, but we work real hard. Amy Harker does a great job, and our teachers do an excellent job with our kids. So gap closing was 5 stars for everybody. You'll see in the area we were 17th, we're the highest. Independence behind us at 29, and Kirtland's at 34. We were 28th last year and 37th the year before, so this is our highest gap closing we've had in the last 3 years. There's our average, we're at 34%, Kirtland's around 70%, and Independence around 97. Not, as I said, the percentages, ranking, 34, 70, and 97 respectively. Graduation rate, it lags a year, so this isn't the class of 25, this is the class of 24 and the class of 23. Okay, when you're looking at 4-year graduation rate and then 5-year graduation rate. The 4-year has slightly more weight. It's at 60%. The 5-year graduation rate is at 40%. You need 96.5 to get 5 stars. We're at 99.5. You'll see this year the 4-year graduation rate's 100%. Our 5-year is 98.8. So that's good news because next year's 5-year is 100%. So that 100% moves down, and we'll factor in, and then you'll be looking at, well, what was our graduation rate this year? And I believe we're at 100% this year, I believe. So you may be looking at 2 100s next year. That's the highest you can get. Max it out, all right? So it's fantastic. Hoping. But again, that's in the books. It's the class of 2025, so I think we met it.
Our kids who aren't meeting that are typically students on IEPs who are extended programs. So they're doing what their IEP team decides is best interest of their kid, not that they're not meeting
Yep.
graduation requirements.
Which is the 5-year, that's why they look at the 5-year rate.
Yep. Some kids stay a 6th, and every so often, depending on the age, they can stay a 7th year of high school, but they count as non-graduates. At the federal level, they get credit for graduation, but I still think at the state level they may count as non-grads on this particular measure because they did not graduate with their cohort. So even if it's appropriate for the IEP team to make that determination. So we were 35th. That 178 was an outlier. I think that was the year that we had 2 students counting as non-graduates. One that had withdrawn from the district as a freshman and never enrolled somewhere else, and we should not have withdrew that student until we knew that student enrolled, and we lost that student. And then there was another student who actually went to Cuyahoga Falls instead of here, but they coded it as here, and they told me I had to get Cuyahoga Falls to claim the student, and Cuyahoga Falls would not claim the student. So that's why that number was so low. It's really an outlier. It's crazy. So early literacy, again, I think we're really showing some progress here. You need to hit 78% to get 4 stars. Remember, we're at 3 stars, and we were at 77.6, so we're 0.4 away. We're climbing, and I think there's an outside chance that we could even make the jump to 5 stars next year. But I feel really good about 4 stars next year. I feel really good about it. So.
Because none of these kids that have been tested, I mean, maybe the ones, but they didn't vote for the silent reading. So
No.
I'm curious, like, what does
Yeah.
happen, because
Yeah, as kids go through the program where everybody's kind of in step and in sync, and we've had more deliberate Tier 1 and Tier 2, and even potentially Tier 3, methodologies, I think you're going to get that. I think the tricky thing is, and this is where, we got to look deeper at, the students, and I think it's worth doing that analysis, is the students who are not hitting proficiency, or the students who are not hitting the reading guarantees, students who are not coming off of REMS once identified, are they resident students, or are they tuition students? Are they students coming from families that have bought homes versus students who have rented homes and things like that? Not that you can necessarily do anything about it, but it does help say, if there are any trends there that we could do that. Because again, we know that students who have early exposure to literacy, I remember reading to my kids every night when they were babies, because I knew how important that and phonics and everything else was. So, but but look how we've moved up. You know, we were 255 in 22-23, 269 in 23-24, we're 140. So we're moving on up, like the Jeffersons. We're doing great things here. A couple of you knew what I was talking about, I think, except for Hartman back there. He doesn't know who the Jeffersons are. But yeah, we want to get up there with we want to get up there with Independence and Kirtland in this measure, and we're moving in that direction. Okay, and then finally, college career workforce and military readiness. This is a component that has been report only the last several years. It is actually measured this year. A student has to hit one of these 11 qualities or characteristics in order to score a point. There's no bonus points, there's no half points, you just have to get a point on one of those entities. Remediation free, English, reading, math on the SAT, ACT. Higher education sets that, we don't set that. Have to earn one of the Year 6 honors diplomas. They have to earn a qualifying score on 3 or more AP or IB exams, so you have to get 3s or higher, all right? That's an important piece for us now. Industry credential points in a single career field, that's a career center requirement. 12 college credits through dual enrollment, early college, high school, or CTE courses. So we're talking about taking college level courses while in high school. We have some of those built into our programming here through Mrs. Zawatsky's classes. Some students go to Tri-C or Lorraine County Community College. But where this even gets difficult is if, let's say a student gets 9 credits by going to either a combination of our courses or somewhere else. And let's say they only get a 3 on 2 AP exams. So they don't hit the qualifying score, and they are not getting dual enrollment in 12 courses. But if they got college credit for one of those 2 tests that they took that counts as 3 credits, they would technically hit the 12 credits for the 12 college credits. The problem is we would have to physically contact the student, ask them to tell us if the university actually gave them transcripted credit for taking that course, and get it verified by the end of October in order for this to count. It's really can be difficult for us to verify some of this. How do I know if a college in Rhode Island gave a student college credit unless I know the family directly and can pick up the phone and say, hey, did you get that? Because the college isn't going to give us that information.
It's up to every college individually how they handle it.
And that
Every
student
college
just graduated and gone.
Right.
And that student's gone. The college will not, even if we know the students are there, so this college is good, they're not going to give us the information because they don't even give the parents the information because that child's 18 years old and they're the owner of their academic records at that point. So it can be very difficult to go through these. But some of these, your apprenticeship, complete a pre-apprenticeship, be accepted into apprenticeship, complete an apprenticeship. Those are career center. There's 4 career centers, strictly career center responsibilities there. And then the last one can be split. So it's not as easy to get these. So right now we're in the process, Mr. Dietre and I are going to work with Mrs. Dietzel over the next couple weeks to verify last year's graduates as best as we possibly can. And, you may or may not be able to get that as accurate as possible. It can be very difficult to get these things figured out. But you can see where the rankings are here. We're 4 stars. Independence was 150. We're 154, and Kirtland's 173. So I feel really good about the first measurement that we're kind of where we are. I know that we missed a couple points from the past, from some coding that occurred, errors in coding from 2 and 3 school years ago that I can't go back and fix. So, but we fixed it moving forward, and I think we can pick up a few points here and there, and we'll see where it falls. We may still just be 4 stars. We'll do the best we can.
I don't think it's just 4 stars.
Right. But, there's a lot in these reports here that I've given you. There's a lot if you go to the state report card. Like if you want to play around with Mr. Muccio a little bit, you can go down to financial data, And you can compare some of the numbers that the state has to his 5-year forecast and say, why does the state have this number here, but you have this number here? You know, that can be fun for you to play around with him. Sources of your funds. You know, we see this last school year, local effort was 68.3% compared to 44%. State aid, 13.2 for us compared to 39.4. Federal aid, 2.1%. That's down a lot, actually, compared to 9%. And then other revenue sources could be your tuition program. I mean, we don't get $3.3 million worth, but it is $800,000 is factoring into that. 16.3%, that's double what other districts tend to have to get the 100%.
Are these our numbers, or
These are what the state has as our numbers, and again, Mr. Muccio can tell you, it's all about whether you have coded things properly. And not every district is created the same. One school district may code something with this set of numbers, and another may do it this set of numbers, and neither one's wrong, but depending on what the state's pulling to get those numbers, it may move it from one category to another. So it's not always apples to apples when you're looking at these things. But what is nice is you can see, like here, we spend $19,731 per kid here, according to the state of Ohio, with a performance index of 102.5. Similar districts, so what's a similar district? A similar district is an enrollment of less than 1,000. You can see we spend the second most, but we also have the highest performance. Why do you spend the most? Sometimes you have to spend the most when you have students coming from so many diverse backgrounds that need to be all caught up to whatever these standards are that the state and federal government is setting for us, and that sometimes takes resources. And what's good is the resources are producing results, and that was something I said to Senator Serino 2 weeks ago. Was that yes, we do spend a decent amount per child here, but we are also getting the results that our community has expected since this school district came into existence. Way before state tests, there was just this expectation that our kids will not have any disadvantage compared to a kid in any other school district. And it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort. Here's our comparison group, all right? If you want to see it a little bit bigger, there's more districts in here, and you just click over the little dots and it'll show you like who they are, and you can see, okay, great, Marion Local. Marion Local spends less, $11,000 per kid, and their performance index is 111.7. You know, so you could ask the questions, well, how are they getting their results? Well, we would need to go visit Marion Local, and I could hypothesize, but
does it show like independence? What's the difference between Paradise and independence?
maybe you just have to find a little dot here somewhere. Because their performance index is up there with ours. Like Kirtland spends, no, that's Kalida. There's Danbury. Yeah. I don't see it. I can't find. They're in there somewhere. Now here's
Oh,
there.
there we are.
So about $800 less per kid, and their performance index is 102.6, with half the economically disadvantaged population that we have. So it's similar. You got two very similar performing districts. There's no significant difference between the two districts when it comes to performance.
I think that this would be an interesting data slide to have handy, especially when we're talking to people that, you know, are questioning high property taxes or whatever. Like, yes, it's true. The bulk of our revenue comes from property taxes. But I would guess that people would be so surprised at how the small number of the percent that comes from the state and federal government.
Yeah. Well, and I would even say of that local effort, keep in mind 75% of that local number comes from your businesses. You're very blessed to be part, because Orange doesn't have that same luxury, and they're spending $25,000 per kid. Now, they're a little bit higher than us in the performance index, but they're also spending $6,000 more per kid than we are.
Yeah.
And you have to ask yourself, is it significant? And look over here. East Cleveland spends $25,400 per kid, and their performance index is 45 points below us. Again, different, just different circumstances, different variables that you're looking at, but and I think this is where you get into some of the discussion with some of your lawmakers about who are we spending our most money on? East Cleveland, Youngstown, Lorraine, some of these districts we're putting a lot of money into, but are not getting the results that the state thinks you should get. And it's not always about what's going on in the academic realm. What's going on when the kid leaves you? That has significance as well, but you're not going to see a lot of that on a state report card. So there's just some really good data in here to go through if you want to look at more information. I encourage you to jump in there. There's many advanced spreadsheets you can pull up, and come see me if you want to go through that.
I think it's significantly lower amount, like it says over there, on the state side, I don't understand where it says 9% for federal, and then on our side, for the district, it says 2.1. So is that the average 9%?
I think it depends.
From the federal government?
So it depends on a couple things. You get state aid based on your special education population, federal aid based on special education population. You get federal aid based on some of your subgroups. So for example, Title I funds are all connected to economically disadvantaged students. We have 35%, and we get funding based on 35% plus what is 35% of 700 kids. That's not the same as 35% of 3,000 kids. And you get a per pupil amount of money. So yeah, some school districts, they don't just have more kids, they also have more need and a higher percentage. I mean, some school districts are 100% economically disadvantaged.
I mean, it looked like we get such small amount from the federal government, and I didn't really know why.
Yeah, we do. It's not a lot. Yeah, it's not a ton of money. We're grateful for it, but
Yeah.
that's why we were talking. And even the state aid isn't a lot. But when they started talking about cash carryover caps, they talk about getting rid of your inside millage. I mean, Mr. Mucher's going to talk about some of the obstacles we're running into right now. I mean, that's almost 70% of our funding comes from just that. So it's significant when you start messing around with those things. And I think at least Senator Serino acknowledged that a couple weeks ago. I'm not saying anything's going to be done about it. I do like the direction that some of the work group and the state legislators are going, or at least that we're hearing that they're going, because they're working to provide property tax relief that isn't going to necessarily affect Cuyahoga Heights schools. Because, again, anybody listening to this won't like this, we don't need property tax relief like a farmer who owns 500 acres needs property tax relief. We don't need property tax relief like places where they have 10% of their local comes from businesses and 90% is coming from the residents. They don't need property tax relief when we're not at the 20 mil floor, but we've stacked emergency levies and some other types of levies on top of that continues to burden the taxpayers and increase in value without them being able to control it. We're not in those situations. We really are blessed where we are from an academic standpoint, from a programming standpoint, from a quality of student, quality of teacher, quality of family standpoint, and from a property tax standpoint. This is a gem, and people should do everything they can to just protect that investment. And sometimes that means you have to vote for other levies in order to continue to protect your investment, because your hardship is not the same as hardships on average in Ohio. Continue to protect that and invest in that. So, but that's the state report card, and I went way longer than I intended. Matt, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. You got the 5-year forecast, which actually the forecast is more important at this time than this is. But I wanted you to have that summary. So thank you to the board for supporting all the programming that we do here. that it makes a difference. It has made a difference and continues to make a difference. Since I got here in 2015, we've done nothing but rise. And that's been the support of the board and then the investment in our staff. So thank you.
Thank you. 10 years of continuous improvement.
Yes.
That's not something to be sneezed at, and we do recognize just how significant your contribution is to making that happen.
I appreciate it. Stand on the shoulders of giants. So,
Okay, so we're moving over to Matt number 2, Mr. Muccio, for the 5-year forecast.
Cool. All right, so there's been some changes to the forecast. So before, it used to be called the 5-year forecast. And then HB 96 came into play, and now it's called the financial forecast.
And how many years does it go out?
So down here, we have the forecast format changes. And school districts are now required to submit appropriations revenue and fund balance assumptions contained in the budget adopted by the board for that fiscal year, so fiscal '26, and projections of expenditures, revenues, and fund balance for 3 succeeding fiscal years, so essentially a 4-year forecast. So functionally, school districts may think of this change as a shift to a 4-year submission. The current budget year, fiscal '26, plus 3 forecast years, rather than a 5-year forecast. They also changed the description of forecast line 1.050 from state share of local property taxes to state reimbursement for property tax credits. Just a name change for that line. They actually changed that name a couple of years ago too. So they've been changing that name, for a while.
yes.
And then the forecast examination, the department examines, and this is ODE, examines all forecast submissions. If the department determines a district has a potential to incur a deficit during the first 3 years of the submission, the district will be required to submit a written plan to eliminate the flag deficits. So in fiscal '26 and fiscal '27, the department uses line 10.010 to identify potential deficits. In fiscal '28, the department uses line 12.010 to identify potential deficits, thereby assuming any projected renewal levies will pass. Districts projecting deficits at line 10.010 in fiscal '26 may be placed into fiscal oversight. Just a little background. So what I had started with is I emailed ODE to get the new template for the forecast. So Kim Richard, who works at ODE, I know her, she goes, "Hi Matt, hope you're well." And then she sent me the instructions on how to generate the forecast template in Excel. And we work with Neonet, so I'd emailed over to Neonet, and Neonet said, they've included the instructions, and they've attached the download for the template here. And that's the one I use. So I used the template, the new template from the state for the 5-year forecast, and that's what we see. But essentially, everything's the same. It's just they eliminated the 5th year. So going into that, we have in front of us here the new financial forecast. And take a look at the black and white that you have. So the black and white is our forecast from May of this year. And I want to compare each of the forecasts together. So take a look at May, and let's look at fiscal year '29, so the far right-hand side, and the very bottom, so the bottom right-hand side. So that number is 2.7 million that we see, ending balance in fiscal '29. So things were going good in May, right? We heard a little about HB 96. We heard a little about the cash carryover talk that they were talking about, but things were pretty good. The next forecast we have is from June 30th. So this includes this is the smaller forecast with some notes on the right-hand side. So that has the $4.1 million total transfer we made, but $4 million is the transfer we made to get us down to a lower cash balance carryover. So So on the far right-hand side, we know our carryover from '22 was 95%, from '23, 92%, '24 was 97%. And then by doing that $4 million transfer that we did approximately 7, 8 o'clock on the 30th, because we actually held a special meeting at June 30th. We did make that transfer, and then that caused the chain reaction to our 5-year forecast, which we knew. Because the state said, not only do you have to get lower than where we were at in the 90s, you had to be below 40%. That's what they settled on. So we made this transfer, and that brought us to 63%. And we knew that we could still carve out some items in the forecast to further push us below it.
Should it be necessary,
Should
right?
it be necessary. So this was the best choice in front of us at the time to not take us fully below the 40%, but kind of splitting it, if you could call it that. And then DeWine came out around 11:15, issued his vetoes, a lot of vetoes, did veto the cash carryover, and we know the House, there was some talk about the override, and cash carryover's been a talk ever since, so. So we did end the year with 63% cash carryover. But see what it did to the bottom right-hand corner for fiscal '29. No longer are we looking at the 2.7, but now we're at 900,000. This was at June. So we know we moved the money to our permanent improvement fund for roofing needs and asphalt needs that we have, but what it did to our operation, our 5-year forecast, this was the impact. So we knew going in that,
And some districts moved that to a 070. We had talked about that account that we currently don't have, and Mr. Muccio has heard maybe some concerns that those accounts might be scrutinized or audited sometime in the future because people were moving exorbitant amounts of money around just to be able to move it back should it be necessary, and we avoided the gamesmanship there. We didn't feel it was transparent and appropriate, and it aligned with our capital improvement plan.
So this was as of June. Now, fast forward to October 1st, today, and then we have our forecast in front of us that we see. And we can see I went ultra-conservative budgeting-wise with this forecast, so it moved us down a tad from the 900,000 to about 128,000. But again, there's a lot of bubbles, it's unknown in that 4th year, but we're still essentially on the trajectory that we had for June when we did make that transfer. And again, that was the law at the time that both chambers had passed, the House and the Senate. And DeWine didn't veto till later on that night, so that was the best information we had in front of us at the time. So this is the forecast that we have in front of us, and what I'll do is take a look at the notes. You guys all have a printed copy in front of you as well. I won't go through every page, but I'll just point out some of the large significant items in here. And I'm going to talk about a property tax issue that we're dealing with as well, so I'll highlight that. But the name was changed, so I had to do a lot of changes in the template I had for the forecast. So it's no longer the 5-year forecast, but it's called the financial forecast. Going down to this first page here, some edits and just saying it's shifted to the 4-year submission, which is the current budget year plus 3 forecast years that we have. We still have our table of contents, nature of the forecast. I'm going to go through this kind of quick, so if you want me to stop, please let me know. On page 7, on page 9, we have the forecast embedded, so if anybody loses it, it's in the notes. I always like it there. One thing I did enter here that's new is before you didn't really have to enter the ADM forecasts in place, just your student count. I input this here because the 3 schools that had submitted their forecast before today that I knew about all had it entered, so I said, if they're doing it, I better follow suit. So that's new that we see.
So we only have 680 students?
Well, that's kindergarten plus grades 1 through 12.
Oh,
So we have to add both those numbers.
okay.
And also keep in mind, like, he's pulling some of these from the state.
Yeah.
State doesn't count some of our students as full students. For example, a Career Center student would only count as half of a student because they spend half of their time at the Career Center. Therefore, they get half of the funding for that student. And we get half credit for that student. So kindergarten also has a similar type of calculation. Kindergarten students don't count as full students in the calculation that the state uses for ADM, which is tied to the Fair School Funding Plan too. So,
Why would they count as full
some
students?
some schools
Especially
have.
since we have full day kindergarten,
Well, some schools have only half-day
Yeah.
kindergarten,
right?
and so I think that has stuck as the standard as opposed to all-day kindergarten. So,
Okay.
but regardless, they only count our 3.5-footers as half kids. So I don't know. It's weird. I understand the Career Center thing. Students who are special education that may be outplaced will count as 0 students for us. So even though you're paying for the kid, so you've got to where kids count is very complicated.
Not right.
Yeah.
All right, as we keep moving along, we get to our property taxes, and I'm gonna talk a bit about this. A lot of the stuff is the same in the template that we have. New levy, haven't really changed up anything here. The 20 mil floor, I think this was back from May, I had entered this, but this is good just to show the 20 mil floor and what schools in Cuyahoga County are at the 20 mil floor, which are highlighted in yellows. Brooklyn for class 1, there's class 1 and class 2. We can see where we're at in both the green and blue, our rates, and then I have a box in the top right-hand corner which traces back and how those numbers are found. And again, this is all from the Ohio Department of Taxation. Garfield Heights for both, Independence for class 1, Maple Heights for class 1, North Royalton for both, and Parma for class 1. That's it for Cuyahoga County. So the new bill that is being talked about in the legislature, 186, and I know that they're talking about it as is or as amended. I'm not sure where they're at. But in essence, what they're trying to do is go after schools on the 20 mil floor, and there's like 400 some in the state, more than 400. So majority of school districts are at that point. For Cuyahoga County, not many. As we keep going, I have 2 pages carved out for HB 96. So this is all new. So it talks about a little summary right here of HB 96, key components that we have, our timeline. So I put some of the important dates that we had down here. When we were made aware of the 25% cash balance, which was April 1st, wasn't a joke.
Yeah.
It's not a
Was
joke.
Um,
Hasn't been.
They switched it on April 14th from 25 to 30, and then we really started our advocacy between that. It really started April 1st, and then it took about a week, 2 weeks for everybody to get a sense of the impact. And then they changed it, upped it to 30, which was still bad for us, every school. And then between that and when the Senate came out with their proposed 50% was June 3rd. We did adopt a board resolution on June 11th. The 25th, the conference committee came out with 40%. We did hold our special education meeting 6 p.m. on the 30th, where we did our $4 million transfer. And then later that night, on June 30th, 11:15 p.m., Governor DeWine did veto that item. I do have our history of cash balance carryover amounts, percentages. We can see that we've been in the 90s since fiscal 19. So this was, this was a controlled 63%, I guess you could call it, because we actively brought ours down. But again, that followed legislation, and we very much advocated against that. That was out there. Look at fiscal 12. I mean, it was down to 7.9. So that's as bad as it can get at that point in time. Next page talks about what Governor DeWine ended up vetoing here. So these items, 63 was the cash cap. Now, highlighted in green, blue, and purple here are the items that the House looked to override. So those were the 3 items down here, green, blue, and purple. And And then the House succeeded in overriding Governor DeWine's veto of item 66. However, the Senate has not done anything on that veto override to date, so they still have to take action on it.
Which one?
It's 66.
They just did today.
They did today. Okay. Well.
Yeah, item 66 today, the Senate, at the last minute,
All right.
they had two defect from the majority party to the minority party,
All right.
and they did override item 66. That happened this afternoon.
This will be updated in the next forecast. So it's,
Yeah, you
lot of
couldn't,
movement.
you couldn't possibly get to that in time.
There's so many, so much movement. We get down to property taxes here, and this is where I'm going to pause for the moment. So we're going to talk about this. I have some examples in front of us. This is what our actual collections are. So we can see prior year, tax year 23, tax year 24, 25 is not completed. And we can see what actual collections are against estimates. Now, if everybody can take a look at these. Matt, if you could pass these down.
Yeah, well,
I think your copy is saved. I'm going to save one. I might have it to everybody. We're going to take a look.
Thank you. Two packs.
this one is this.
So everybody has two sheets in front of them. The sheet where it says collection information is created by Cuyahoga County. The other sheet is created by me, this one, which is the one up here on the
Okay.
board that we have in front of us. So kind of wanted to go far back in time and take a quick look at the sheet that we have in front of us. And we can see that all right. Everybody should have. All right, so I was stapling all this before I jumped into it.
You sort of from back to.
Yeah, I tried to do back to front on this one, so I guess, did purple print off?
Yeah, the stars.
The star?
Perfect, perfect, perfect. So, if we look at it, I think look at purple star to purple star. So we can see on here that on the county, they're at 12.2, correct, on the collection information on the left-hand side? For Stephanie, yep.
Right here, yeah.
And then my sheet was also 12.2, which is tax year 18, right? So my estimate was almost spot on to the dollar. Now, really, it changes because the valuation changes, but I don't get those updates from Cuyahoga County, otherwise I could plug that in. But that's for tax year 18. Let's look at tax year 19 that we have in front of us right there, which is Green Star. So if we take Green Star to Green Star, that is on the county, the collection information sheet, 12.3 million. And then on my sheet, on green, I'm also 12.3 million.
Where do you see that?
The green, you gotta look at the green
Oh,
to
above.
the green,
Yep.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I was looking off to the side, okay,
Perfect.
okay.
All right, so if we change to the next, keep in mind that tax year 20 is not available on the county's website. That was the COVID year. So we're going to look at tax year 21.
So it's gonna be 2 pages.
It's going to be blue star to blue star. And if we do the same thing, compare Cuyahoga County for our levies was at 12.9, and I was also at 12.9. Okay. For tax year 22, which is going to be orange star. That from the county was 13,012,000 for their orange star. My orange star was 13,045,000. So spot on pretty much right there. The next tax year, 23, pink star. total of all the levies, and I was at 13.4. Close, but there was some Board of Revision adjustments that came into play that upped the valuation. Now, let's go to tax year '24. Now, this is the one that doesn't match up. So, Cuyahoga County's at 15.1, and I'm at 17.5. It's a big difference right there.
Where's this one?
Last page.
It's not, doesn't have a star.
I don't have
so
a
it's
star
just-
in this.
Oh, okay, up here, okay.
Right.
17,
So I'm at
0.5.
17.5, and the
Mhm.
county's at 15.1.
okay.
So that's a big difference. So historically, my sheets have matched out. You know, what's going on right now? Well, let's take a look at this sheet in front of us that we have. So, I have it up here on the board. So we have tax year '23 at the bottom, tax year '24 on the top half. Now let's look at our voted levies that we have in place. So, right here, this one from 1976 and prior is 2.2 million. So it's 2,292,356. Down here, that same levy, 1996, generates $2,292,036. So almost spot on, because House Bill 920 says you collect essentially the same revenue. There's some carve-outs for new construction and whatnot, but you collect the same revenue from that levy as it was first passed. So they freeze it, basically. So that's why we're seeing the same amount collected on that levy. So the 1981 levy, 1,041,980, 1,041,834, essentially the same. Below it, our 1988 levy, 1,319,000, 1,319,000.
Yep.
Our 1991 levy, 173,000, 173,000. Below that, our 97 levy, 1.7 million, 1.7 million. Below that, we have our 2003 levy, 1.8 to 1.8, and then our 2012 levy of 3.1 to 3.1. So that's all of our voted levy that we have here. Now we have our inside mills down here of 1.8 million, 1,854,147. Now inside mills increased to 2.3, so it's a $500,000 increase for the inside mills because our valuation went up from 452 million to 576 million for valuation. So as your valuation goes up, your inside millage goes up as well.
Yeah, and that's why there's been some concern about inside millage as well as the 20 mil floor, because as your valuation rises, the 20 mil floor brings in more money, and then your inside millage brings in more money, and it's unvoted. And that's why people have been so concerned. People on the 20 mil floor don't worry about House Bill 920, which we do worry about House Bill 920 because every levy we have is continuous and is effectively influenced by House Bill 920.
So there's a difference in inside millage. And then what's also new up here is we have our new levies, right over here, 2024. So we have our current expense, our current operating one for 7, and then our PI for 1. So that brings in about 3.1 and 450 some thousand dollars. So about 3.5 million for the new levy, for what we have. So when you add up our new levy, 3.5, and then the 500,000 for that inside millage, that's $4 million. So we were at 13.4 from my estimate. 4 million higher is 17.4, 17.5. So the numbers here work out.
And they have worked out historically
They've
with
worked out
Mr.
historically,
Muccio
right.
within a few $1,000s
Right.
every time.
So they've worked out historically. And this 17.5 is the number that I had on, my forecast. Now, what we're looking at from Cuyahoga County is 15.1 that they
Yeah.
have here. And they're saying that that's the total of all of our levies, not 17.5 that we were looking at, but rather 15.1, which, when we looked at it, I must have looked at it 10 times. I'm like, that can't be possible. And I just got this collection information for tax year '24 yesterday from the county. So, we talked about it. We also reached out to our legal counsel, both,
Two legal counsel.
two legal counselors. And both said, yes, what we did appears correct, and what Cuyahoga County has on here for the 15.1 is incorrect. Our levies should be generating 17.5 million, not 15.1 million.
Is it possible they're not including something from the most recent levies that have been passed in 2024?
Kind of like spaghetti, could almost be anything.
It's possible.
Right?
I don't think
I
it's
mean,
probable.
Can they split it out like you did here and like,
No, I asked them to do that
Yeah,
years, a
that'd
while
make it-
back, and they haven't. But look at this number right here, it's 15,139,396. That is almost.
$1,100 off of what they
I don't
sent
know
us.
the current levy.
Yeah.
So if we look at it through that lens,
Well,
we did
how
not
did,
include inside millage
how
when they
did you
gave
get
us
to
our
the
property
17
taxes.
then? If they,
They have to add inside millage to it.
It's 15 plus that 2.1
Oh.
equals that 17.5. So it's almost as if they did not give us our $2.3 million for inside millage on our collections. So we brought this up and we spent about an hour and a half today with legal counsel going through the same scenario. And legal counsel believes that we are correct. That when you look at this, again, our levy history, adding the new levy, which was 3.5, which we know, we should be up in the 17 million ballpark for the total of all of our levies. So not only did Cuyahoga County give us this collection information here, but they gave us 14,523,187 right here for our collection amount. So we collected a portion of that 15.1, which was 14,523,187. That's way off.
Well, and they said we got an email today, right, that said that some of the collections have been off by, what was the percentage they said?
Yeah.
Like 2.5% or
Yeah.
something like that? Well, this is 13.7% off. This isn't a result of being delinquent in collections.
Yeah.
There's something more significant going on here, so.
So we've engaged both legal counsels. We've, emailed over for a meeting with Cuyahoga County. And we have not emailed legal counsel yet from Cuyahoga County. But if we need to, that's our next step. Because this is a compounding item. So if
Well,
this
you-
isn't addressed now and corrected, next year is going to be wrong, the year after is going to be wrong, after that's going to be wrong.
do you think they're not giving us that because it says unvoted next to it?
That's how it works, yeah.
Right.
They can't not give it to you without notifying you they're not going to give it to you. And usually they wouldn't do that without us going before the Budget Commission and
Sure.
justifying why we
Right.
don't need the money or why we should give the money back or whatever.
Right.
Right.
That didn't happen, so it's curious.
Cuyahoga County.
And are other districts getting the same?
Good question. So this collection report, I asked them to send it to me since I use it for the forecast. And historically, they send it out mid-October and they upload it online. So it's not mid-October. So they don't upload it online or send it out to districts at this point. So I may have the only copy unless somebody else asks for this right now.
So I guess, I mean, I'm sure that what we have is correct, but there is a gap in terms of, right now, the money we're gonna get. Should we not vote on this today? Because this assumes a number that right now
Well-
we're not getting.
We have to do the forecast just inputs some data here. The forecast doesn't,
It's not binding.
it's not binding in any, it just captures what we did collect.
I mean, it would significantly change the forecast.
It does, it does. So,
I guess
and I,
so.
right, and I knew we were trending low back at the first half of this year. That's where Orange Schools came out and said, they were trending low as well. A lot of other schools were. And Cuyahoga County just came out and said, everybody's trending low.
2.9% low.
And I said, okay, let's see what happens the second half of the year. Well, the second half came and we received a lot less revenue.
A
to the
lot
point
less.
of- Right, and I just finished booking that last week. And that's where I'm like, I need to see this report from Cuyahoga County. When I got this report, it really set off alarm bells. So I got it yesterday. So between the time in which we got it to right now, we've had meetings with legal counsel, and we have a plan going forward to address it. So this is, at least for me, the most pressing item I have in front of me that we have to have addressed. So,
Yeah, it's a problem.
It's a problem that
It's a
we're
big
gonna,
problem.
we gotta address, and we'll take it, as far as it needs to go, but it has to get addressed with Cuyahoga County. So, does that make sense, kind of everything I presented,
Yep.
Because I did the same presentation at both legal councils. Again, Matt, what did you hear
Yeah, they both, I mean, they, exactly what you communicated. Some of the collections are down across the area, but this is more significant than just typical collections being delinquent. And it appears that the numbers eerily match, that if we're off by $2.3 million, and $2.3 million happens to be the inside millage, that potentially that hasn't been factored in, or maybe it was misappropriated. Maybe some other entity got our money and they're gonna have to
Did you
give it
actually
back.
ask the county where?
They
the
haven't
inside
returned
mill-
our calls
Oh,
yet. When,
Okay.
when,
We could say,
when it
looks like
got,
you
when the
missed the inside
conversation
news.
got very specific, they've quit answering our calls, and
Yeah.
we at least got a response of an email that's not, it doesn't suffice, but somebody did get back to us today. We've requested a meeting with the head of the, is it the head of the Budget Commission or
Administrator Cog,
administrator at the Budget Commission?
essentially people.
With David Seed and us, we requested that in person
Yep,
as early as this Friday, and then we gave them 3 days next week that we could meet as well, because we need to resolve this ASAP. We need answers.
yeah, this is quite alarming.
So, Mr. Muccio, did you say that we had collected physically a
Yes.
certain portion or some
Yes.
amount of the, is it second half
Right, so if you look at
collection?
the collection information sheet that we have in front of us,
Yeah.
if you look at the middle line where it says current collection,
Yeah.
so there are two amounts that add up to 14,523,187.
First and
The
second.
first half is 7,967,486,
Mhm.
and then the second half is 6,555,702. So essentially, that's our first half settlement and second half settlement on this
Okay.
page, on page 16. So we can see it's, for that time period, January to June of '25, and then July to December of '25 as well. So this is broken out in all these different categories, super complicated. So we get class 1 and 2, that amount, our TIF money, this amount, PI, this amount, our public utility personal property, this amount, and our homestead and credits, this amount, which adds up to these two, which go back to the sheet. So yes, we did book in our system 14.5 million, but we should be at 16.8 million
Okay.
to get to about a 96%.
And that's what I was
collection rate.
getting to, is the
Yeah.
idea that not even what we physically received matches or coincides with either our figures or their figures.
Right.
Okay.
And
Right.
shouldn't those two numbers be a lot closer?
Yes, that's what we're saying.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, like the
Okay.
first half and then the second half, right?
Historically, this one's always higher. See how it's 53 to 47? So
Okay.
historically, the first half's always higher than the second half settlement,
Okay.
usually. But everything always traces out to, we've been collecting, in the past, we got
Yeah.
13.5, and we collected 98.8%. I mean, if you just compare the 2 years, I mean, we collected 5.1 here, 5.3, and we passed the new levy. I mean, we collected actually less, 4.1 to 4.5 in the second half.
Makes
So
sense.
it's,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, so we, and again, we got this yesterday from the county early, and kind of a special request to work on my forecast. And, once I started looking at the numbers, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, didn't make any sense. And that's why, we started engaging legal counsel, and, I wanted them to.
I was just gonna say, so would you recommend or suggest that the board somehow modify or amend its proposed vote on, not proposed, but its vote on this matter for this evening?
Do we need to vote on this matter at all?
No, this
not
is just
yet.
the forecast. It's just
Oh, I
forecast.
thought we were gonna be voting on this evening, I apologize.
No, yeah,
I
no.
apologize.
This is just, we're gonna be voting on the 5-year, or the financial forecast that we have in front of us. But, no, this doesn't impact anything. I mean, that is really what we collected, but we're just saying now that we have, more data from Cuyahoga County, and we
Yeah.
knew we were trending low, but now that we have this, we're gonna go back and say, we're off by approximately $2.3 million is what we're saying. And we have to prove it to them. So we're gonna have to go and say your computer system's wrong in these areas. We're right, we're gonna have to sit down and convince people of that, and show them this, and, and see how we go about that, so.
I wonder if it's just a matter of someone not inputting the inside millage amounts.
It could be, and I've asked that question and they have not answered it.
Okay.
that's why a face-to-face meeting and just kind of presenting this past history, we can go through it and see where
Sure.
we've been at. I mean, it's kind of easy when you look at it through that lens,
Sure.
which I don't think they do. So I think once we sit down and have that meeting, and hopefully it can be something easy to fix, but, we're in it for the long haul, so whether it's easy or not,
Yeah.
obviously it has to.
It has to be
because-
fixed.
Right, so. Any questions on this before I move on, or? All right, so property taxes. So I had, constructed this forecast and did a lot of the legwork before I had that from Cuyahoga County, but I did tier us down in collection percentage, just thinking that we were gonna come low. So we do have to fix this issue going forward, because it's gonna be significant, but yeah, these numbers I have here jive with like a 90% collection rate, but typically we're in the mid-90s. So
Yeah.
once we get this matter fixed, and we sit down with Cuyahoga County and really go through their numbers, Matt and myself, we should be back up to our level. So it should be easy to fix it, I would think. So, but we'll go through that. But we can see the numbers that we have input here. And I'm gonna continue to move on. We have our TPP phase out, or excuse me, our tangible personal property. And actually, this was affected as well. So every year that I've done the forecast, see the box I have here for our actual collections? That 3,094,191.
Yeah.
It's gonna trace to page 24, and then here on page 24, it's that 3,094,191. So it's always matched out whenever I do my calculations on my sheet. This is the first year. It should be 4,99,772, and we came in at 3.8 million, so even that's lower. So, got some things to fix with Cuyahoga County that have never occurred in my entire history here in dealing with them. So, and I do know that, there's some, we've been talking about some thoughts why that's taking place with the county, but we have our amount here. So I went low. We collected 3.4, and our valuation's 93 million. But I forecast, a potential drop to 84 million in valuation, which just brings in approximately 3 million. But there's a bubble there that we're gonna have to work with Cuyahoga County to get that fixed. Continuing to go on, we have our state aid on the next page, 26. I just added a little bit of HB 96 here. We have our student count here. Continuing on, we talk about the differences in state aid. So we get a low amount of state aid, and this is just unrestricted, not restricted state aid. So we're getting a bump in base cost, a little bit in special education. Transportation for the moment is the same, a little bit higher for special ed preschool, and a little bit higher for special ed transportation. Everything kind of where it's at. This is our state aid on the next page. It has been going up for us, and I have us capped at a certain threshold because we don't know what the state's going to provide for public schools going forward in the future. Unrestricted is the next section. I'm just going through this quick. As we're looking at this, I kept the amounts the same, kind of shuffled, but as George is here, he knows best that our threshold cost has been less. I don't know if you wanted to throw anything about that in.
Since we are educating more kids in the district, and we're not getting that big outside expense, it's reducing the reimbursement.
So we went from 174,000 on line 6 to 70,000 potentially is kind of where I'm estimating. I'm hoping it goes higher than that, but that's kind of the floor. We got, a little bit more than 100,000 prior year. And ODE did something where they shuffled the payments, so, and I have a note about that here, but there was a timing issue in a payment from ODE, so you had to back it out of one year and put it in the next year. So, fun accounting. We have our state reimbursement property tax credits. This is the new name for line 1.050. I did talk about this piggyback credit that is making its way in the news. I'm not sure if you've heard about this. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. It's from House Bill 96. So House Bill 96, the two-year operating budget includes a provision that permits county commissioners to create a property tax credit of up to 2.5% of qualifying levies for owner-occupied homes. The law gives boards of county commissioners the discretion to authorize this additional credit by resolution. Homeowners already receive a 2.5% reduction on property taxes for owner-occupied residences funded by the state. The new law allows counties to piggyback an additional credit on top of the 2.5, so it gets a 5%. The local tax credit is not reimbursed by the state, meaning any revenue loss is incurred by local taxing authorities, such as schools and municipalities. So the decision on whether or not to enact this local credit rests with individual county commissioners, who must determine if the potential tax loss to other political entities is appropriate. In Cuyahoga County, the authority to implement this credit has not yet been chosen to do so. The decision rests with the county executive, Chris Ronayne, and council. So the financial loss for us is approximately $30,000 if this gets enacted. There's a lot of stuff all around. I don't know, any thoughts on that?
Losing money everywhere.
This right here is our chart of our tangible personal property tax phase-out, and we've dropped another ring on the chart. So now we're in fiscal year 2026, which is going to bring in $874,000. Last year, fiscal year 25, it was $1,087,000, and we can see the cumulative loss. We're now at $19.3 million altogether, and we're only a few short years away from being at zero.
Yeah.
So it's this is also generating the need for a new levy. Like if this was consistent, we'd be on different ground.
That's a testament that we should say that despite losing this money over the years, we've still, remained operational and,
I did not, yeah, absolutely. I did not factor in the potential piggyback credit to line 3, the owner occupied. So we cut it in half from 60,000 to 30,000 would be our impact.
Yeah.
So, but I haven't heard anything yet from Cuyahoga County. I doubt they will. But you never know. Yeah, this is all other revenues that we have. We utilize 3 main investments. Our biggest one is Star Ohio. We can see our yield percentage and where they've been. The next page talks about tuition, and we're projected to receive $813,000 in tuition, up from $745,000. And a lot of that is due primarily to the increase that we have, $500 for K through 5, $500 for 6 through 8, $500 for 9 through 12. So that's significant revenue coming back to us.
so everything's going up the next school year?
Projection, yes, for
Okay.
fiscal '26. So we go from 745,000 at 182 students to 813,000 with 178 students.
So
Project.
currently the tuition is 3,000, 4,000, and 6,000?
Up there at the top right-hand corner, 35, 45, and 60.
That's
This
right,
is fiscal year
25,
26.
26, okay. I was reading the wrong column. That's what I thought it was, okay.
We have our, we call them O'Keefe students here at the Court Place, students that we have there. We have our TIF. We had David Seed come and do the TIF presentation a bit ago on that. Then we have our roll-up here. Did want to point out on lines 4 and 5 that we generated over $1 million in investment income for fiscal '24 and fiscal '25. I don't think that's going to happen for fiscal '26, but I was glad that we were able to get over $1 million for both those years. And I took it as a challenge or a game for '25 to see if I could pull us over $1 million, and we did. And I was extremely happy about that. So, any questions? Because there's not too much otherwise new essentially the same trajectory that we thought when we made the transfer of 4 million. It's a little bit more conservative, a little more carve-outs that we have. But again, our biggest item right now is dealing with this property tax issue with Cuyahoga County.
Quick question on the investments. You really took a cut on that. Is that just being conservative, or is that with the money that was moved? Is there not much money in investments right now, or?
No, it's just being conservative.
Okay.
That's a bubble, so I'm
Percentages going
hopeful
down.
that, it will
Okay.
go higher, like 700,000 maybe combined, not the million, but maybe.
Okay,
But I didn't want to go too high and, overestimate. So I'm pretty confident that there's going to be a bubble there, but you never know. I mean, the Fed could come out and drastically cut rates, and then that affects us with Star Ohio and our investments. And I don't want to lock in our investments in CDs for multiple years because, it could be a short time before we would have to, withdraw those out. And we know, there's a lot of factors. I mean, health insurance, we haven't really, covered that, but Suburban Health Consortium, we've been watching that for quite a time. And consortium just ended the fiscal year, and they ended where they started the fiscal year. There was no gain, and they were hoping to gain like 1 or 2 million. There wasn't any gain. So, trying to build bubbles to, encounter, anything that would happen and still have a strong forecast to say this is when we think the new levies will be needed.
back to the state report card. Would this fall in the other category as far as the financial?
Yeah, I'd have to look at that because they take ours and then I think they take other funds and lump it all in together, and then they have this software, and I'd have to look
Okay.
at the software. Kind of take a
Just
look
curious.
at this a little bit. Yeah, unless there are any questions, our focus again is on, like we talked. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Very
Thank
good
you.
presentation.
Thank you.
Gary, I gotta go now, sorry.
So let's see, so that ends our presentation, so we're into section 5, treasurer's business.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I ask for items 5A, 6A through 6F for approval tonight.
Okay, I have a motion for those items, please.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Dobbins,
Second?
second by Ms. Etter. Is that right? Okay. Any discussion?
Yep, just wanted to point out a couple items. Purchase orders over 5,000, we just have 3. We have one with CDWG, 80 staff laptops for $57,110.87. And let me throw that to Matt if you wanted to contribute, add some stuff to that.
This is just an order to refresh our staff laptops. Windows 10 is actually ending support in the middle of October, so we'll be getting these devices. It'll probably be extended to the end of October, giving us enough time to replace everyone, but staff equipment, this is continuing from last year's order of 30, so it's just finishing out the fleet along with the desktops in the district.
Is there a discount with this?
Yes, there's a rebate available through, I believe, the rest of this week, so if we get this PO done sooner, we can get that rebate to CDW and get about $6,000 to $8,000 possibly back. We also have some discounts on these just from a sale that CDW is running, so it's just great timing all around to get some new equipment. They're running a bunch of stuff for Windows ending, so.
And this was the lowest quote we got.
Yep, this was the lowest quote between all of our vendors. We also checked different brands just to make sure. You never know if Dell's going to be cheaper than ThinkPad, than Lenovo, so we did our due diligence and made sure that we got the best deal.
And we think these are going to last for how many years?
My goal is to make them last 7 to 8 years.
Great.
And do we have any plan for the old laptops?
Yes, if we can reuse them. A lot of the issue is they don't take Windows 10. They were bought about 7 years ago, so they just don't have the processor to handle Windows 10 with the new AI features and all that they're
Windows 11,
incorporating.
you mean?
Yeah, Windows 11.
Yeah, you said
So some equipment does update to 10. There are those, we have some laptops that do that, so we are making sure that we don't just overbuy and overdo everything. We are upgrading people who can upgrade. Nice thing is we don't have computer labs anymore since we switched to one-to-one Chromebooks, so now we don't have to update 3 different labs anymore. Now we're just keeping with just staff equipment.
What's been the reusable life of the laptops traditionally?
Typically, they're about 5 years before you want to look, opening them up every day. Teachers tend to use them pretty well. So we bought ThinkPads work editions, hopefully making sure they last longer because they are more work edition laptops.
Second one is thanks, Matt. Second one is varsity scoreboards, so that's for 2 new indoor scoreboards for the North Gym. And even though the total is $8,115 for both, the athletic boosters will donate 50% of the cost, or $4,057.50, so essentially donating for one of them.
Oh, very good.
And we actually received that, so we're gonna send our thank you letter to them.
Yeah, we'll get that thank you letter soon.
And our third item is
Very
our
generous.
annual board docs, software that we're using for board meetings. W-9s, we just had 2. We had our scoreboard vendor and a T-shirt printing one. Approximate cost $500 for the T-shirt vendor that we have. And then now for board docs, item D is going to be our MOU. This is an MOU for one employee for a unique circumstance that employee had requested, that we are, happy to help out with that employee.
Yep.
And E is the donations. Again, we want to thank on the record the Cuyahoga Heights Athletic Booster Club for their generous donation for the 1 scoreboard for the North Gym. Thank them very much. And F is going to be the approval of the October 2025 financial forecast.
Okay. Any other questions, discussion?
Just ask a question.
Absolutely.
It just seems that the board doc software is a lot of money.
Actually, it's been the same amount ever since we got it. It's always
I
been
know.
10,600. It's a lot.
It's a lot of money.
It is.
I mean, I know it serves its purpose,
It's a lot.
but maybe the next time we can ask for like the friends and family discounts since we've had them for so long.
Yeah, we don't even get the administrative guidelines, which
Is that the Neola? Not board docs?
that's through Neola though. Yeah, but yeah.
I know, I probably ask this question every year.
It's all-
It just seems like a lot of money. But I know we use it, I mean, but I just, you know.
what would be the cost if we were still doing it paper pencil?
Hard to, quantify
Ten-
that, but
I'll ask.
Time-wise.
Time-wise, yeah.
I
I
think
think-
time-wise is, I think the ease of being able to conduct,
Yeah.
public meetings and have the public be able to, really what it allows is, I know it's a high cost, reasonable in that spirit, but it allows the public to look and search for agendas at any point in time. They can go back and see what was board approved, the attachments that we had.
Yeah.
Just, it's an open, transparent way to look at the business conducted by the Board of Education.
Right.
School district.
Okay.
Anything else? Hearing none, treasurer, please call the roll.
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye.
Mrs. Etter.
Aye.
Mrs. Deckman.
Aye.
Mr. Souchaki.
Aye, motion passes 4-0. Moving on to treasurer's discussion and comments.
Yep, just 3 quick items. So for dental insurance, our renewed for another year with a 0% rate increase. We're happy about that. For vision, we're still in our renewal, year 2, with a 0% increase. So that's great news.
And then there's suburban health.
And then there's Suburban Health Consortium. And I just made a note here, just including it, talking about the increase, which was voted on as 11.5. But it adjusts to fit into the bucket approach methodology, which, if you remember, we voted no on that bucket approach. And that was the recommendation from the Health Cost Containment Committee that we have here from the district. So the Board of Education was also in tune with that. And, we were all in consensus to not be in favor of that bucket approach. We voted no. We were one of the, I think, 2 school districts too. But that just means they upped that 11.5 a bit to get to that bucket approach on plan design. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to section 9, superintendent's business.
All right, thank you. So on the consent agenda, I have item 9A, items 10A and B, items 11A and B, and items 12A and B for consideration.
So, motion for those items, please.
So moved.
Ms. Decker?
Second?
Mr. Dobbin seconds. Discussion.
9A is my request to attend the Bassett Fall Conference next week, 7th and 8th. The registration's $375. I plan to drive back and forth each day because of my personal situation I've got going on. So it'd be $375 plus the cost of mileage, approximately $550 total. 10A, this is an employment of a cafeteria staff, so we have somebody with some experience, which is nice, especially when you don't have a lot of time to train people. This is Jeanette Gray, has experience in a couple school districts, specifically as a cafeteria worker. This is up to 4 hours unless approved by the supervisor. We're bringing her in at step 7, which is approximately what she was making at her prior job. So pending the satisfactory completion of the background check information, which I believe she has already passed superbly. Next is a motion to approve Dan Canese to be a mentor to Jeff Mudra. Mentorship is required per our contract, and it's a good best practice anyways. It's an amount agreed upon by myself and Chase, and so that amount we've been using this year is $250 for the year. Ask for that particular one to be considered. 11A, this is the approval, it's kind of a dual approval of our DEC trip. One is to approve the trip because it's an out-of-state trip. Second is to approve No Walk Tours to be the facilitator of this. We do have a coordinator in-house. I believe at the last meeting we approved Mr. Dietrich to do that. The No Walk Tours handles everything. They handle the transportation, they handle the hotels, they handle the meals, they handle the money for the meals, they handle all the stops, all the ticketing for the various museums that the students go in. That takes a lot of burden off of the school district. And that cost, at least as it stands right now, I'd have to look, is $549 per student. Letter B, this is the approval of student wellness service proposal with the ESC of Northeast Ohio to help us with our multi-tiered system of support systems district-wide, specifically related to our positive behavior intervention and supports, which PBIS is required by law since 2013. The ESC would assist us with coaching, district team coaching, attendance alignment with our PBIS, our climate survey, feedback support, and delivery of professional learning, all in an effort for us to hopefully get some state recognition from this. The state does give awards as they did for literacy. They also do this for PBIS. And the goal of PBIS is to not reward kids, but to change your practices so that when students do act out, you implement restorative type practices that keep them in school so that their attendance remains good, and when the attendance is good, the learning is good. And this is not going to be any cost to the district, even though it's $8,500. I've asked Bob Mendering, the superintendent of the ESC, for permission to cover this cost with our subsidy grant. We do get money for being a member of the ESC of Northeast Ohio. And we do have enough money in the account to cover the $8,500, so we don't have to tap into our federal funds or our general fund. So that'll be covered by the ESC. Okay. And you see the next two are supplemental positions, supplemental contracts. The first one, these are chat contracts. You're looking at scoreboard operators and scores for the season. And then you see under the second one, miscellaneous pay rate schedule. This is for ticket takers. So those are there in the public content for people to see the spreadsheets. And that's it for consideration.
Any questions for Mr. Young? Hearing none, treasurer, please call the roll.
Mrs. Decker?
Aye.
Mr. Dobbin?
Aye.
Mrs. Zetter?
Aye.
Mr. Stjack?
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Superintendent discussion.
Yeah, just a few things, because I know we're trying to progress here. In the packet I gave you, this is a letter we got yesterday from the Department of Education and Workforce. We have been awarded the exempt district status as a result of our performance on the state report card. So what does that mean? Well, that means we get some flexibilities in licensure, we get some flexibilities in resident educator program. And those flexibilities can be important to us, especially with some shortages we have in the teaching field. So I just wanted you to have that, and I printed off some ODEW information because, okay, so we have exempt status. What's that mean? It means that we're doing really well. The state trusts us to give us some flexibilities in areas that they can give us some flexibility. Where are those flexibilities? You can see that within the packet, but we've been receiving this every year, and it's good for a 3-year period. So what's great is every year you get it, you just keep on tacking on another year to the end of it. So this exempt status is good for the next 3 years. The next set of documents I've given you, I had reviewed this with Mr. Dobbins before just to see if it had any merit or any worth before I passed it on to the rest of the Board of Education. Kind of per the request of Senator Serino and the request of Mayor Bocci, some of the requests, there's concern about a proposed constitutional amendment that may make the ballot for next year at the November election in 2026 that would eliminate property tax. Property tax generates $24 billion for services in Ohio, not just schools, but just about everything that people care about. Police, fire, EMS, roads, bridges, snow plows, some other services that are out there, libraries, for example. So it's kind of a 6-part series that would probably require a lot of updating, considering how fast things are changing at the state level. But I was thinking about putting this out as 6 separate communications, and I've included those just for you to read. If you think this is really, if the board overall feels that, hey, you're kind of dipping your toe in an area that's beyond the scope of expertise, I would 100% respect that. But it's not just about schools. I want to address, what is the proposal? What does it mean for education? What's it mean for police, fire, and emergency services, libraries, and community services? The replacement problem, and then what are the better solutions that have been proposed at the state level? It's not a political statement at all. It's just no taxes sounds great, but I think when you're faced with if you're having a medical emergency in your house and you call 911 and it typically takes 5 minutes to get there, and now it's going to take 25 minutes to get there, ask if it's worth your taxes. Just little things like that. Consolidation of governments. It sounds like a good idea. You would have to do that. But again, when you only have now 1 police force as opposed to 3 police forces, what's that mean for your village's services? Or how would you like doubling your sales tax? How would you like going to the store and instead of paying 7 or 8%, you're going to pay upwards of 20% of sale taxes? What does that mean for Ohio? Well, it means if I live on the border of Ohio and Pennsylvania, I'm going to Pennsylvania to buy everything. I'm not going to buy anything in Ohio, and we border 5 states. So, just to get people to think about these things, yes, we tend to be, by nature, we're humans, we tend to be selfish. We take care of our own house first, and then we worry about other people when it comes to things like this. But there are far-reaching implications that go well beyond schools. And the senator and one of our mayors felt that it might be good to put out some communication to just educate people so that if they see something like this, they might think twice about whether they want to sacrifice more than just their school. It would be services that would directly affect their livelihood. So I've given it to you to just kind of read through and see what you think, and I'd like to start getting this out probably within the next couple weeks. So if you got any opinions, Mr. Dobbins, if you wanted to chime in about your just general thoughts on it, you don't have to. No, we need to put you on the spot.
No,
I won't
no,
take
no.
any longer than we have here tonight.
Actually, I wanted to take just a minute and thank you for your work putting these together, and Senator Serino for his comments and Mayor Bocci's response, his comments. I think that it would behoove us to get out in front of this issue and at least inform the public in a very nonpartisan manner or way about the potential consequences of what seemingly might be a very appealing option that might be put before them. It could have very, very far-reaching consequences, as Mr. Young said. I wholeheartedly support Mr. Young's efforts and would support him issuing these to the community in a weekly fashion, and would just suggest, as we've discussed, that they be updated to reflect current events as best as possible.
Well, yeah, like
Good luck.
like the governor's work group released their recommendations last night. And
Yeah.
At the time I put this together, it said this will be due on September 30th. Well, that's come and gone.
You've got your work cut out for you.
You know, so it would require updating. Even some of the references I used, aren't necessarily reflective of the most accurate numbers. And so I've been working on trying to update these, even beyond what you have here. You'll get the gist of it.
Well, thank you for doing
Yeah,
this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Are we
Are
getting
you
a little
gonna
bit too
invite
far
us to
ahead on
speak,
this?
Not yet.
to the
not yet.
village places? Okay,
No, not yet.
okay.
I'd be more than happy to show up and speak, and especially if they have a topic. Final thing, I just want to read a really positive email that Mr. Garish got last week. And I told him I'd share it at the board meeting, because we always hear the bad stuff, but it's always nice to get some positive feedback from surrounding communities. So this is an email he got from a parent from the Jefferson School District up in Ashtabula County. So just wanted to reach out as a Jefferson football parent. We played your middle school team Wednesday, and although it was a long drive, I was pleasantly surprised with your team's sportsmanship, manners, and behavior on and off the field. I have 4 sons in football, 2 in middle school, 1 high school, 1 in youth. I go to 4 games a week. Those had to have been some of the most attentive and respectful boys I've watched on the sidelines. I know our boys really appreciated the generosity of pizza and drinks after the game. Thanks so much, and have a good rest of your season. Your athletic director, coaches, and players deserve some praise. And I think it's nice when other people recognize some of the things that we're trying to do here, and it's something that we are trying to talk more with our students about. Some programs like to set a low bar for themselves, and rather than us falling to the lowest common denominator, let's set a bar high, and let's force other people to rise to our bar as opposed to going to the lower denominator. And it's nice to get something like this, and I know Mr. Garish shared that with the middle school staff, shared it with our high school football staff, but it should really be shared to everybody that people notice when you do something exceptionally well, and sometimes it has nothing to do with winning and losing. It's just about being a good human being, and it's nice to get some type of recognition. So, well done to those coaches and those players, and hopefully this is something we're modeling, at least it's expected, to be modeled across the district. So I wanted to share that.
Thank you for sharing.
All right, that's all I have.
Thank you.
Okay, we said, take a deep breath because
Yeah,
15,
it'll be
board
quick.
policy